Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Clark. I'm a partner with Courage Group, and I'm delighted to be talking today with Norah Holder. Norah just recently retired as a CEO of a hospital in Ontario, and we had just finished working on a team coaching engagement with you, Norah, just before you made that decision to retire. We thought it would be just a really interesting conversation to ask you about your experience of choosing team coaching and what you really learned about that process. So maybe we'll just dive in and say, you started with us over about a year and a half ago on a team coaching process. Why was that a priority for you to do in the midst of all the busyness of healthcare these days? Why was coaching in your team important?
Oh, thanks, Donna. First of all, thanks for having me. And why was team coaching important? It was important because as I had gone through one-on-one coaching with you for a year, and it started just as the pandemic began, I realized how important that first year being with you, it was to have good, clear coaching for leadership, particularly during a time of great complexity, sometimes a lot of chaos. um, there were so many changes occurring, and it really required a different leadership style. And I'd known for years in healthcare that different leadership style was required, but it got accelerated during the pandemic. So I spoke about it with you, and we did agree that team coaching would be um, phenomenal for our senior team in particular, to learn not only what are our strengths, but what are the opportunities for us to improve as leaders for the whole organization.
Mm. One of the things we hear, Nora, in fact, we were talking to a team this morning, and when is the right time to do this? How do you make time to engage in team coaching, um, particularly when you're in the midst of the seemingly ongoing crises that affect our teams in healthcare and other organizations?
I think that I'm not sure if there ever is a right time. um, uh, Engaging in coaching is a decision that is not made lightly, but it is made when I believe the realization was for me that what our team required, I alone as the CEO could not provide, and what the whole organization required from senior leaders and all leaders. I could not provide that professional and personal growth. And during a time of accelerated change and complexity, that was required, oh, greatly. And so that was the main impetus for making the decision to engage in team coaching.
Yeah. And one of the things that we did as we worked with you and we do with all our teams is it's not like just a leadership development course. We're actually working with the real issues of your team. Was there something in particular in how we approached the team coaching process once we started with you that was particularly helpful for you and your team?
Well, first of all, we had to engage in it by electronically. We had to do it by Zoom, which was a first, I believe, for us. And I actually found that the modalities that we engaged in were really really helpful. Um, Secondly, the other pieces that were extremely helpful were the self-assessments. And so there were self-assessments that we performed on ourselves, so they were one-on-one, our own. And then there were leadership self-assessments that were performed by different leadership groups within the hospital. So the medical advisory committee, the operations leadership team, and then the entire leadership team. And the results really were extremely enlightening and helpful, um, on a personal, on a professional, and on a team basis. And that helped to provide the roadmap for us moving forward. Uh, there were many aha moments for many of the members of the team. It wasn't a surprise for me for the results. I think for some team members there were some results that were a surprise, But once they started thinking about it, those were the reasons why we had gotten into the team coaching. We weren't satisfied with status quo, and we wanted to move from good to great. And so it was so ah, it was inspiring in terms of being able to understand what we all needed to do, not only individually but separately as leaders.
Mm. This sense of, we all bring our individual strengths to the work on the team, but there's something that happens when that gets engaged at a collective level that really ups the game for the whole team, doesn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, you really experience that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, that helped us move towards our journey of identifying what type of leadership the organization wanted and we wanted together to have, and what they wanted from not only the senior team, but what they wanted to spread throughout the whole organization. And it was collective leadership. And Courage Group help us to move forward to define what collective leadership meant. And then we shared it throughout the organization. It was so helpful naming it and defining it. And it included our organizational values, which were extremely, extremely important for us. Um, During the pandemic, it became very clear that we needed to demonstrate our values more than ever. And it was becoming difficult during all of the change and all of the sometimes confusion. There were, in healthcare, we're used to best practices and they take years to formulate and to learn, etc. And best practices kept changing, 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 changing. And they came from Public Health Ontario and also the government, and they were directives, and it was really difficult to engage as leaders, um, the organization in terms of understanding why we needed to continually change these directives and these best practices. Um, it became very clear that trust wasn't about us and trust. It was about trust in the public health, the government, etc. Collective leadership and also understanding our strengths and areas for improvements, how we could actually together work together as a team to help the organization understand this is the route that we really needed to go, but also everyone wanted a voice and everyone needed to have a say. And it was important for us to understand and to define during a meeting, okay, we would like your input. It may or may not be included in the decision, but to say that right up front, at least individuals understood that their voice was heard, but it may not reflect in the decision that was made because it could not happen because these best practices were um, directed from another place. But it was sort of the decision-making ladder. What steps could people be engaged in decision making? And it was difficult at times, but we wanted to remain in the relationship, and to do that, we had to be honest.